Welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Tasneem Abrahams, and on this channel, I share tips and tutorials for health professionals who want to start and grow profitable private practices in South Africa. I recently had the opportunity to interview three amazing private practice owners for my podcast, The Daily Hustle, but I'm sharing it here because we discuss telehealth in South Africa, how to move it forward, entrepreneurship, and tips and tools for innovating in our professions in South Africa. If you enjoy this video, please like and also consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification if you want to be notified of any new videos that I post. Let's get into it and enjoy. I have with me Basheera, Renisha and Tian Woolman. Welcome everyone.
Thanks, Tasneem.
So I'm just going to get straight into it and let everybody introduce themselves. So Basheera and Renisha are both from the My Online Therapist platform, and Tian is from Telehealth SA. Lots of exciting things happening in the world of telehealth in South Africa. So perhaps we can start with you, Tian. Can you just introduce yourself and tell everybody what Telehealth SA is and who you are?
Awesome. Thank you very much, Tasneem. So I'm Tian Moorman, and I'm the founder of the Facebook group Telehealth SA. And I'm a physiotherapist myself, and also the owner of eMed Center, where we have a multidisciplinary practice. But so Telehealth SA is basically a group on Facebook that is available for therapists and for medical professionals, specifically to basically help and engage on a level so that we can introduce telehealth into South Africa and get it established within South Africa. So it's a practical group where we make it telehealth practical for people.
That's great. And of course, we know that telehealth has exploded now for obvious reasons, but I have it on good authority from one or two people that know you that you have been passionate about telehealth for a long time and have been wanting to make it work and bring it to South Africa for a while now. Is that true?
Yes, so we have been doing our research for more than 2 years now. And obviously with the HPCSA regulations that did not allow telehealth in South Africa without a practitioner being available on the other side, we kind of put it on a hold for some time. So we were quite excited once the regulations was uplifted and we were able to start with our telehealth sessions.
That's fantastic. So thank you. So the reason why we've got you on with Basheera and Renisha is because the My Online Therapist platform is in fact a telehealth platform. So welcome again to you ladies. Who wants to go first? Who wants to introduce themselves first?
Yeah, my name is Renisha, and I am also an occupational therapist. And with Basheera, we started My Online Therapist, which is a responsive, simple way for children in South Africa to access therapy. We are offering occupational therapy, speech therapy, play therapy in your homes and hopefully eventually in your schools. And yeah, we're very new in terms of being able to offer the service just because it's now become an easier way with regulations being dropped. But we've also been researching this for 2 years. We've been passionate about it. We've been working in sectors where we could see this really being applied and used really effectively. So it's a great time to be launching, and it feels good to know that there's a demand out there for it.
It's amazing how you guys have kind of been almost like exploring this in parallel, and now you've all come together. I find that quite incredible. I want to go a little bit more into you personally, but before we do that, Basheera, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. My name is Basheera Surti. I'm also an occupational therapist, and I am pediatric occupational therapist. I've been working at different private practices and also a lot of NPOs around Joburg since I qualified, which is a good few years now. I'm also the founder of Diketo Inclusive Education that provides support for children with disabilities within mainstream early childhood development centers and schools. And part of that journey is how my online therapist also started up, which is quite exciting, and something we could also talk about as well.
Absolutely. So I wanted to just go a little bit into you guys personally. Maybe we can start with why did you become an occupational therapist? And I think the best OT is the best thing since sliced bread. So just be warned, you are outnumbered with the females and with the OTs versus physio ratio here. So
It's okay, as long as we get telehealth established.
In OT, I think, as a young person coming out of school, you don't really know what to study. I knew that I wanted to work with kids, and I had visited an occupational therapist. I was living in a very small town called Uitenhage, and there was only one therapist in the entire town working with kids, and she just seemed to have a really great influence in the community, as well as fun playing with kids. So I went to study not knowing what I was getting myself into, and coming from a small town, moving to Cape Town, I actually enjoyed Cape Town more than I did enjoy occupational therapy. So it was only when I started working did I find my passion for OT. I worked at a school in Gugulethu, special needs school, for 5 years. And I started there as the only therapist, and then it grew to a team of 6, OT, physio, speech, psychologist, and a social worker, 2 to 2. One of the most amazing experiences, but also one of the most challenging. It was definitely tougher than my ComServe year, but it pushed me in directions that forced me to look for solutions. From there, I actually moved into the NGO sector, and I started working for a social investor. And what I used to do there really then took me into a different realm of social entrepreneurship, innovation, working in NGOs where they're doing OT, not by an OT, but by using a program that was run by an OT, and really just making it work, and that opened my eyes to the potential of not just doing clinical one-on-one sitting, in a room, but having this wider impact. And that's, since then, it's always been my drive. Bash and I studied together, and we've journeyed this road together. So I've had a few projects that worked, that didn't work. This one we're hoping is going to stick and is going to stay. So yeah, and I'm a mother of twins. So I'm at home. I've been at home with them for the last 2 years. They're 2 years old now. And so they'll be fine. They can cook for themselves, feed themselves. And I can carry on now with my dreams. But it works out so well that this has really come at a time in my life where telehealth meets my passions and my lifestyle. So
yeah, so in school, I also wasn't too clear about what I wanted to study, but I knew I wanted to work with people and wanted to help people. And so then I found out about occupational therapy by someone in Rustenburg, which is also used to be a small town in the Northwest Province, not so small anymore, who was an occupational therapist working in mental health. And that's where my interest initially was, mental health. And I moved to Cape Town, studied at UCT. Thank goodness for Ren. I don't think I would have made it through campus without her, actually. It wasn't easy being a student for me. But then I found my way into PEDS. Once I was doing my ComServe, and we had this elective block where we could work anywhere in South Africa. And I think that's where my passion for children, where I started realizing my passion and interest for children, and also for community occupational therapy. So really looking at OT in a broader sense, and not just the one-on-one interventions, but actually looking at community building and transformation through occupational therapy services. And yeah, since then I've worked in different NPOs in the sector. So Cotlands, Malamulele onwards, Africa Tikun. I've just moved around because my passion's always been serving children. And I think what's very obvious is that there's a huge majority of children who don't have access to therapy services. And this has always been an area that I wanted to focus on. And that's how, through my work, I decided to start my own organization called Diketo Inclusive Education, where we work towards inclusion, as I mentioned earlier, and supporting ECD centers to become inclusive for children with disabilities.
I connected with you was because as a Josie for Autism Director, you participated in our event last year where you were one of the exhibitors, which is fantastic. Yeah, so Tian, how about you? How did you decide to become a physio?
Well, I grew up with an aunt who was a pediatric physio, and so she used to, she was the first NDT trained, well, one of the first NDT trained physios in South Africa. And always when I used to visit her, we were engaging with the patients, and yeah, and that's how I became a physio. So my field of interest is also pediatrics, specifically developmental delayed children, and love it. And yeah, I love making a difference in people's lives. So that's why physio.
That's amazing. So much similarity. Who knew? And also, I just want to speaking about similarities, I didn't know the two of you were at UCT because I was at UCT. What year did you graduate? What year did you graduate? Oh, okay. So I feel rather old right now.
I was about to say, either you feel old or we feel old.
Yeah, no. So I think it's fantastic because obviously there's that theme there with the passion of pediatrics, and it seems like the common theme in your interest in telehealth seems to be around access. And why that's important is because that is one of the arguments against telehealth, that people say in South Africa, telehealth isn't going to work because our disadvantaged communities won't really benefit from that. What are your views on that? Now, seeing that you have, especially Renisha and Basheera, you've both worked in the NGO sector, you know what it's like at that grassroots level, you know what the challenges are. And with Diketo, especially because you're working a lot with the caregivers and the teachers and the trainers, what is your perspective on and view on telehealth in South Africa?
I'm saying it won't work. You know, have they tried it and have they tested it? Because we are really proving every day that this is something that's easy, accessible, and efficient, something that does work. And we're reaching so many more children who ordinarily wouldn't have access to any form of therapy services. So, you know, if we just look at technology, everyone has access to at least a cell phone. And just with programs that we've been doing and, you know, just contacts via WhatsApp as well, sharing videos, things like that, that parents are comfortable with, of course, in order to get some sort of intervention or advice is something that's definitely been used, you know, been used in the private and in the public sector already. So I definitely think that it is possible. You know, even if we look at our government schools that are now becoming more efficient with using technology, they may not be perfect, but that's also a step towards transformation, towards more technological access, which is another means of then children reaching therapy services through that model as well.
That was one of our first questions when we asked people we were meeting. You're like, you know, this is what we want to do. What do you think? Do you think it's going to work? You know, we'd ask that a lot. And, you know, I never ever got the answer no. We never got the answer no. The only answer we ever got was try it, you know. And I think that's our approach. Someone else said to me, you know what, there's so much scope if you step out of your profession, in the sense that obviously keep your integrity and keep your professionalism and your ethics, but bring on the Vodacoms and the big Transnet trucks, plonk them in the communities, be where the people are, let your, internet enabled trucks be there and schedule your therapy. You know, there's nothing wrong with innovating in a space where there's so much need, and bringing on the right type of people, because there is money that can be used for social good in this country. And so that's always been what drives us, is that yes, we want to offer a service that is high quality and can be accessed, and we want to maintain the traditional therapy look and feel, but it's sometimes we have to step out and really try and think about what does access really mean, and what does it look like in different communities.
Yeah. So you mentioned at the start that it's been something that you've been researching for the last 2 years. Is that when you tell me a little bit about when you first had this idea to create an online or teletherapy practice, and what was that time like when you first had that idea? What was some of the things that you had to do, or the challenges that you had in eventually getting to this point and seeing your idea into fruition?
We were fortunate to have an opportunity to be part of a hackathon, which is a tech kind of competition to find solutions that are currently to problems that are in communities. And I think that's when we started working together, looking at access and looking at using technology to improve access. And through that, just working at Diketo in some of the communities that I've worked at, I realized that, the therapist at Diketo can't go to every single ECD center, can't reach every single child that needs occupational therapy, speech therapy, play therapy. And we had an opportunity, I think it was last year or just the year before last year, of a child who could access therapy services at one of the ECD centers. So I went in and I did the assessment, and I was working very closely with the ECD practitioner and a play facilitator who was then carrying over programs, OT programs. But because the child had a moderate learning disability, that facilitator needed a lot more support. And that's where Renisha came in, and she was basically the iPad OT, because she would sit in on their sessions, basically on an iPad, looking at the whole room, basically telling where to put the hands, how to adapt activities within the session, what to do, what not to do, how to improve the session as they went along, which was really impactful and helpful. The child graduated in grade R and then moved on to grade 1 from there, which was really great. So I think our journey's been started in that way, and then followed up with a lot of research just internationally on what other countries have been doing using online therapy and teletherapy. And that's when we realized that this actually works practically in our context, but also it's been working all over the world, and it's been done all over the world. So that's how we kind of came about the online therapy service.
That's incredible. Tia, do you have any questions or comments around what they've just been speaking about?
So I would love to know, obviously, you guys, when you started, how did you take that leap of faith? Because, I mean, to go from a in-person therapist to an online therapist, how did you change? How did you make that mind shift? For me, it's, I mean, I was in the beginning, and I understand it now, how I made that mind shift, but it would be interesting to hear, especially out of an occupational therapist perception, how you guys got to that point.
When we first started, we were using Skype, and we were, we were dealing with like bad connectivity and things like that. And we were like, is this really working? Can it really work? And then we've got, because Bash and I were working together, we had to really brainstorm around, let's not think about, can this really work? How are we going to make it work? And that's all. We just were curious. We were curious to solve a problem. And I think that's just where you need to start. Like, just be curious about it and just try and don't give up, and switch from one and have a backup plan, switch from one platform to another platform if you have to. And the more sure that you know you're going to find a solution, the more comfortable your client will be. The more comfortable she'll know you are, or he'll know that you are committed to show up, even if it's in this very technological way. You are making a plan to show up. And I mean, that's the only way we can really get comfortable, is if we make a commitment to ourselves to find that solution. And I think, in a time now, especially with our lockdown and COVID, people are getting so much more comfortable with video. See, people are getting so much more comfortable with communication online, that this is going to be the future. So if you don't want to, it's okay, but you probably need to shift your mindset. And I think the new therapists coming out of universities are going to be at an advantage, because this is the world they've grown up in, right? Yeah.
And your mindset shift that you had to make?
It is, it was also a mind shift for me initially, because I do love hands-on therapy. So I think moving to technology was a shift, especially because it does take a lot more of preparation, and being less hands-on, especially with little ones, means the kids' parents need to be more hands-on. And so it's almost like you are treating from the other side, but you're also facilitating at the same time from what's going on the one side. So it is a mind shift, but I do believe it's something that can get smoother the more that you practice it as well. And I still have my moments, and I'm still practicing it and still getting used to it as well, because it's still quite new for me. But it is a journey.
Yeah. I know, Tian, you had a question around something that Basheera touched on there, was the preparation.
So obviously I think that's quite a big question for a lot of therapists in every single profession, okay? The preparation of the session. How do you guys prepare for a session? And if you can take us maybe like through a practical way of what you will do before a session, and how you guys engage with your patients and those things. I think that would be quite nice to know from your perspective, to see how you do it.
To start off with, to prepare is the resources that may be needed on the other side. So being in touch with the family. So if you're doing it with parents and their kids, so it's the resources that they would need to have, the space that's available in the room. It's the technology side of things, like is the Wi-Fi connection okay, videos, the sound, things like that. So it's about looking at all of those things and having those things in check before starting the therapy process, and then going through the session, and then obviously the feedback afterwards as well. And each session's been quite different, so it really does depend on the client, I guess, and the family. So if you're pediatric therapist, like the parents of the kids as well, like what is that relationship like, what is the engagement with the laptop, with the screen, it's all of that, those factors that need to come into hand as well.
And why is the feedback at the end quite important?
So I feel like just for wrapping up the session with the parents and covering the points of why we did certain things and why certain things are important, and just follow through for home programs as well, which is quite helpful. Yeah, those are the main points. And I think also just preparation for the next session, just going through what worked, what didn't work with the parent, because as much as it's a new experience for us, it's also a new experience for the parent who's on the other side as well.
Yeah. So I wanted to touch on, you obviously mentioned a lot of the challenges like connectivity issues and being uncertain and all of those things. But from a business point of view, what were some of the challenges that you faced in starting my online therapist and currently are facing, and what are some of the things that you did to overcome those challenges?
the challenges have been around the regulations in the beginning. You know, it was really about how do we get around this, not around this, but how are we going to have to take a bigger advocacy role first before we really let our business, grow into what it is. But how do we advocate without doing therapy to show and prove the concept and prove the model works? You know, so we were sort of stuck in that space for quite a while, to be honest. We were working with a tech team, looking at all the different platforms and what options, would work in South Africa. And we were also really just putting our feelers out there in the academic space and finding out, sort of what are we allowed to test? What are we allowed? What would not necessarily allowed to, but what is ethically okay in terms of developing a framework, guidelines, and how do we go about it? So we were on that journey for a while, and because we really thought, it was going to take a really long time for these regulations to change, we wanted to do it right, but then COVID hit, and it was really, a time where we saw therapists coming together. And yeah, Tian, your Facebook group really just, I think drove a lot of that. So I don't know if that was always your plan, but when it came up, I was like, this is good things right here. And then since then, it really has been about attitude shift. It has been, we've had to fight the case. We've had to say, actually, this can work. And also be accepting of the attitudes that come of being fearful of the change, not wanting it to go down this road. But felt also that there was so much short-sightedness from a lot of the authority bodies, and I think we're still going to have to do a little bit of advocacy post-COVID. So that for us was, sort of that navigating that space, because that's not something people teach you how to do. Whereas building a website, you can kind of figure out, bringing on therapists who have a similar passion for what you're doing has also been great. And then in this time, seeing the demand for our service has just been more validation that we're on the right path. But one of the biggest challenges I found actually was the online standardized assessments in South Africa. So it's so expensive for South African therapists. And that is definitely a space of innovation. It's definitely a space where we need to start thinking about what South African assessments can we digitize? How do we go about that process? And if not, what are the options for standardized assessments? And what is the future, I guess? And how do we start getting researchers to start looking at this space? Because it's not to say that we're not going to be doing it, or that we ourselves are not researchers. We want to rather we're the implementers. We want to rather do the work, but we also want to make sure that the growth of telehealth and teletherapy is happening in a way that all these factors are being considered. Those were sort of the main challenges.
Absolutely. I totally can relate to what you're saying about the assessments and the problem we have in South Africa. So on the one hand, people are saying, but telehealth won't work for South Africa because of internet access and all of that. And yet we are not pushing for South African testing to be forefront and center. We're still using international tests, which often are flawed for our population. Like I often find with the cultural differences and the language differences that they fall short. And now with COVID and our rand dropping to even now it's 19 rand to the dollar. Assessments are even more expensive. So absolutely that must be and I think maybe Tian, I don't know if you want to speak to this, but this is a time of huge financial strain for a lot of private therapists. And so what are some of the challenges or the hesitations that you find health professionals have in terms of the cost of now pivoting towards telehealth?
So, Tasneem, I think the biggest issue is at the moment also that a lot of therapists do not, because they're not, well, they haven't even tried yet, okay, the telehealth platforms. So now they are struggling a little bit with the fact that medical aids are paying, a lot of the professions are getting paid less because it's a telehealth session. So they are like already like, nah, I'm not going to try this. It's too little the money that we're going to get out of this. Okay. My view on this is it's to get some money now is better than nothing. Okay. Rather save your practice now and we will fight the fight later on to get telehealth also on the same standard and even higher in some of the areas for therapy. And so I think that's one of the big things for practices at the moment is that their concern is that they're not going to get enough money out of a telehealth session, and I totally get it. But I think that's a concern that one can rather look after COVID-19, all the issues is down, we can look at pushing a bit more towards that side. But yeah, I think, and then the other thing is that also I think the biggest scare at the moment for therapists is the change, to think that they have to, and also the influence of, like Renisha was saying now, is that the standardized tests are too expensive, okay? So we can't do the telehealth first assessments at the moment. So a lot of practices are losing out at the moment on new patients because they can't see a patient in person, and they also don't know how to do this on a telehealth session. So I think this is going to be one of the most important things that we in South Africa and the academics, they're going to have to develop these things for telehealth and get these guidelines out so that telehealth will be on the same level than an in-person session, because otherwise it will always be a substandard therapy session, the view of it. Even though it is, I find at the moment, I mean, I work with quite a lot of pain patients also, and the result that I got from this using the telehealth sessions, how I equip my patients and not programmed my patients to believe that they need to constantly see me. It's amazing the effect that it will have also for patients, because we are equipping people to think for themselves more. And that's why it will give access to so much more people to have therapy, because it's cheaper, but your overhead is also cheaper if you are running a telehealth practice, because you can do it from the comfort of your home. So I think it's that mind shift that still need to take place, because a lot of people, unfortunately, are so used to the being in person still, and the overhead is still there at the moment. But I think the future, and that's what I'm excited about for the new people that are now being trained. And it's something that we're going to have to also push and advocate for, is that people need to be trained at varsity level on telehealth. So that this can be used and that we can give access to so much more people in rural areas. Because I don't believe in the nonsense of the data problems and those things. Those things can be solved. There's enough money in our country. There's enough companies that will avail the money for these things if we can give access to more people in healthcare and quality healthcare.
And if you think about it, the problem of data and internet access is a cheaper and easier problem to solve than setting up full-on comprehensive healthcare and rehabilitation in these outlying areas. It's also something from, and I know because you two have worked a lot in the social entrepreneurship and NGO space, if you think from sustainable point of view, you can't expect people, the private sector, to just hand out charity. The reality is, even when they are giving, there's always something they need to get back in return in terms of their corporate social investment. So you mentioned a company like Vodacom, for example. These big telecoms, there's more in it for them to be involved with a project that can, enhance access to healthcare than for a company to go and set up a community center, for example, because there's a lot more that they can get back in terms of the social capital, and the marketing and all of that things. Another thing I want to also touch on that you mentioned, Tian, around the money story, that was part of the reason why I started Private Practice Growth Club, is because a lot of therapists are thinking in a therapist's brain and not in a business brain. And in business, there's that thing of, 100% of nothing is still nothing. So it's all about how do you keep pushing the revenue streams? How do you keep your cash flow going, and how do you keep your business afloat? And you deal with the problems as they go along. So I think a lot of that is also people not only making a mind shift change in how they are actually practicing therapy, but also how they are thinking about their practices, that they need to start thinking about their practices from a business point of view, not from a therapist point of view, and leave the therapy thinking to when they are actually interacting with their clients. So yeah, I think those are some really important points you brought up there, Tian.
Can I just add to that, Tasneem? I think, when we were going on this journey of teletherapy, we never saw it as competition for any other form of therapy. And I think that's also a very important point to make, because it's not a competition. So it's not actually about us. It's not about the therapist. It's an option. It's an option for people. It's an option that some people have never had before. An option for therapy. It's for me, it's such a big shift to say, yes, I don't have a therapist at my school. I don't have a therapist in my community, but I have this option to speak to a therapist on WhatsApp or to video call a therapist, and I think that people can lose sight of that when they are in the thick of, how do I keep my business afloat? And if we go back to saying, how do I provide an option, provide a service, maybe that's also a way of, people getting back on board and sort of saying, okay, let me try this option.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if there are any other last questions or comments or perspectives that you'd like to share before we round up.
I mean, I did want to add to Tian's processes question, is because technology is changing so often, and we're looking obviously at platforms and things like that. What I've seen working really well in the States, and obviously it's not, it comes down to expenses in South Africa, is the iPad Pro. So the iPad Pro at the moment can do the most amazing things. It's got an amazing digital pen. And if you write on it, it actually turns it into font. It's that technology that's been there, but the iPad Pro just somehow makes it so much more easier and efficient. So you could run your teletherapy session with your iPad Pro next to you. You could you could do all your record keeping, your report writing, and it would immediately upload onto your platform, and then your session is done, your admin's done for the day. So there are ways to make processes more efficient. It could cost more money, but as the demand for these things increase, the technology gets cheaper. We just have to make sure that we're using it for our simpler, making sure that the processes are simpler, that we're testing out a multidisciplinary team. Our vision as my online therapist is for every public school in South Africa to have a virtual online multidisciplinary team that they have access to for teachers, parents, children, and that it becomes an integral part of the schooling system. So watch this space. We're trying to prove it, and we hope that we do.
No, thank you so much. That was actually, I'm glad you brought that up, your vision, because that was going to be kind of the questions that I was going to bring up now as we wrap up, was what your vision is for my online therapist. So maybe you can then just add to that. Where can people find you or find out more information, contact you? Could you just share that information?
So we do have a website. It's myonlinetherapist.co.za. And we are also on social media, on Facebook and on Instagram, My Online Therapist. So you can find us there, and our contact details are there as well. So you can reach us on phones or email.
Share with us about Telehealth SA if there are any health professionals who want to find out more and for some reason they've never heard of the Telehealth SA group, how do they find out more? And also just share with us what your visions are and plans are for Telehealth SA, because I know there's some exciting things that you've now created as well to provide more support for therapists. So if you could share that as well, please.
Yes, Tasneem. So I think there's every therapist must know about Telehealth SA now in South Africa. If they don't know about it yet, then they need to get under that rock out now, because I think, yeah. So when I started Telehealth SA more than 6 weeks ago, I thought it's going to be a 50 or 100 people that will be joining us, and it will be just a journey that we are going to embark on and support each other to get telehealth somehow in South Africa a little bit more exposed. And little did I know that it's going to explode into such a big group. And yet it is excited because the platform will also give us eventually the access to what my plans was. So I've registered a Thera e-Care. It's a non-profit company for therapists specifically that would love to give their time to therapy in remote areas. And this way we are going to obviously try and establish Thera e-Care, using our Telehealth SA platform to get that established. But also it is about getting each and every individual practice in South Africa equipped to have this tool in their toolbox. Because if you are an expert in some sort of an area or in your field, we want to know about it, and we want to be able to refer our patients to you via telehealth, because you can see the patient. And I think that's the biggest vision for me eventually is that we will be so linked together as a multidisciplinary team that we will be able to access any therapy that we need for a child through a platform, because people are connected and they are using this tool in their toolbox. And I think the most important thing is a lot of professionals, they crucified me for this because of Telehealth SA and what I'm trying to do with Telehealth SA. I do not want to replace in-person therapy. I am so for in-person. My hands they are burning to touch a patient at the moment. And but I know that this platform will also, it will give people that all the information they need. And that's what I want, is obviously to get people up and running. Okay. And unfortunately, a lot of people are still very clueless when it comes to the telehealth platforms and all those things. So we have now created modules for them that they can enroll on, and where we're going to spend one-on-one time with them, consulting with them, helping them, getting TeamViewer and everything, so that everything on the computers is set up and running, automated, so that we have a system running that it's easy for you to book your patients and to continue just with your services. So this way, I think a lot of people are struggling with this barrier at the moment. They do not know where to start. Okay, even though all the information is out there on Google on where to start, people still do not know. They want to be led now. And that's what we're going to do now with our Module 1. We've got Module 1 that you can register for, and that's going to help a lot of people. The telehealth newbies must register for that, because it's going to take you practically through everything, and it's going to be profession specific also.
Cool.
So we're going to get people that will partner with us, that will help each and every profession, so that even the most unlikely profession that you would find on telehealth will be equipped to do telehealth sessions. So that's my vision. I just want everyone to be equipped and to have this tool in their toolbox.
That's incredible. So besides the Facebook group Telehealth SA, where else can they find you now that you're kind of expanding your reach a little bit more publicly? Where can they find you?
So they can contact us on eMed Center. eMed Center is obviously my medical center that I run out of Randburg. And we are also part of a multidisciplinary team there. But our practice at the moment is the only practice in eMed Center that is offering the telehealth services. As soon as COVID is obviously it's uplifted everything, we will also introduce it to all the other people in the building and get them up and running. But obviously we want to partner with people like you guys also to get the services out there. It's not a competition now. It is now a thing of getting people exposed to this kind of methods and also getting healthcare, quality healthcare for all South Africans, and to make that available. That's my biggest dream, always been to be able to help people in South Africa, because the amount of times where people have phoned me and we wanted to help them, but obviously because of regulations, we couldn't do it and we had to refer them to the closest therapist. A lot of people don't have access. And those children and people are suffering because unfortunately it is what it is. So quality healthcare, this is the way forward for us. And if I read the news and every article that's been written now in this COVID time about telehealth, I'm excited because the world out there that is ready for this transformation of the therapy. And it's going to be awesome to see how we're going to expand in our fields and how it's going to change our fields also. So I can't wait. It's exciting.
But I think you guys have all shown how in any field, if something is important enough to you and you choose to see problems as opportunities, then anything magic can happen. So thank you once again. And I look forward to the feedback we get from this episode.
Thank you so much for having us.